It's quite a complex topic. I mean, it needs time to really go through all these conditional relations, all these pachayas, and to have a good understanding. One thing I can say is that, because the topic is deep and difficult, if you are really trying to understand it, you have to really, look into the details, and you have to spend some time to process all the information and discussion in mind. See? So in fact, especially when you go through these different combinations or categorization of these pachayas, if you have the list with you and their expositions, then it would be very good, because then you can compare and contrast, then you can have your understanding. I think you have got the question, right?
Yes, teacher. For the first question, after 5,000 years, I said that the Patana would be the first of the Abhidhamma books to disappear. For the first question and the second question, I actually have the same answer. I got it from a book by Ashin Janagapiwanta on Patana. So it's not actually a reference from the Pitaka, but I will try to find any reference related to it from either from commentaries or something, and I promise to get back to you after that.
Disappearance of Abhidhamma. There is also, I think, discussion probably in the Anguttara Nikaya, Samyutta Nikaya, in some places. There is a discussion with regard to the disappearance of Dhamma, true Dhamma, Sabdhamma, right? As far as I remember, Professor Andrew has written an article on that as well, disappearance of true Dhamma. But what does it exactly mean? How it is going to disappear? That is the question, right? What does it mean by disappearance? Does it mean that all the Abhidhamma books that are available will be burned down to ashes, so there will be no books? Or those people who can understand Abhidhamma, or who can expound Abhidhamma, they will pass away, therefore there is no one to really talk about Abhidhamma? Or would it be the case that people would be so busy with their own life and so on that people will not have any time to reflect on the reality of existence, therefore there is no thinking or discussion or reflection on these matters? You see? So you can reflect on this expression, and then you can have your own conclusion, right? Even right now, when we are discussing about Abhidhamma, how many of us truly understand the Abhidhamma teaching? So true understanding means not just intellectual understanding. You experience it, you know it for yourself, right? So it doesn't matter, I mean, not just the teachings in the Abhidhamma, but even the teachings in the Sutta as well. These are not a matter of really conceptually understanding, okay, conceptual understanding. These are the matters of practice. So even when we are having conceptual understanding, conceptual discussion, if we take it, as an occasion for developing our mind, then it becomes part of our practice. Otherwise, the fundamental teaching of the Buddha is that you have to be free from all kinds of concepts, because concepts are the things that make us, wander in the samsara. Perception, proliferation, concepts. So one has to be completely free from all kinds of concepts. No judgment at all. Okay? Just having the awareness of things as they are, without providing any kind of conceptual level on them. Right? Yeah. So disappearance of Abhidharma, in my opinion, it should be understood in that way. Nowadays, for example, many people say that, in different discussion with regard to the realization of Dhamma, that there are no arahants in the world, or probably there will be no arahants in the world in near future. So people talk in these terms, right? And they say that Buddha said it, right? Some masters said it. Some suttas talk about it. Now, it is not the, it is, how do you say, it is not because the prediction that there will be no arahants. The underlying message is that as long as you practice, you are going to be an arahant. You are going to be free from the samsara. But if you are not practicing, just through conceptual, discussion, how are you going to, get rid of this samsaric cycle? It is also possible in a way if you are really, in the presence of a great master like Buddha, Sariputta and so on. Sariputta heard this one statement from Pranava Asaji, and immediately he attained Sotapanna, right? And we can see in the text, it is mentioned that when the Buddha was giving talks, when he was providing some talks on a certain topics, among the audience there are monks, there are people who just immediately after hearing the teaching attained a certain spiritual stages. So what it means is that
I think that's also because the Buddha is actually very quite selective of who he was going to preach to. I mean, those people are practically ready to attain some level of spiritual enlightenment. So I think that's not quite fair.
There are a lot of there are a lot of conditions involved. And then if you are talking about, yes, of course, I mean, it is the Buddha, and I mean, those people who have been hearing him are really attentive. Now, think about Devadatta, why he did not, attain any stages. But there have been so many more, people like that. There is one incident, one story that I remember from the text. I don't remember the text name exactly. It says that because there was a discussion that Buddha is so powerful in the sense that he is highly spiritually advanced, and he is the Buddha, he is the Sabbanyu, right? So somebody asked him, why, don't you make everyone attain enlightenment with your power? I think it is, I think probably Sariputta who asked him this question. Or I don't exactly remember, but there was this kind of a discussion with the Buddha, and Buddha said that, I can just explain the teachings to the people. It is up to them to put them into practice and realize. I cannot make them realize the Dhamma. If somebody's karma is not ripened, then there was an example of a butcher who has been killing animals every day. And this temple where the Buddha and some other monks have been living, the temple was not really far away from this place. So when he has been killing these animals, they can hear the sound of these animals crying, right? And then it is probably the Buddha who said that, you see, this person, I can go to him and talk about the Dhamma. I can give him the teachings, but he's not ready to listen to it. It would appear to be just mere words for him. He would ignore it. And now think about the case of Angulimala, who has been turned into a serial killer He went on killing people. So what kind of mental condition he was having? But then when he met the Buddha, he just uttered, the Buddha just uttered some words in response to Angulimala's question, and it is struck him, right? Now, when you think of all these conditions, what you can, have in mind is that there is a possibility. It is up to you and me, how serious you are, right? So yes, if so, one thing is very, very important in the Buddhist spiritual practice, that is adhitthana, or how do you say it? Even in the discussion of Noble Eightfold Path, it is called right view and then right intention. These two factors, especially right intention, and of course it has to be based on right view. Your intention has to be very, very strong. Intention means here adhitthana. Okay, adhitthana means setting up a goal. What do you want in life? Why do you want it? Look at the life of Siddhartha. As a prince, he was having a very good time. He can become a king very soon, but he left everything. And he spent 6 years in the jungles, in different places, right? So what kind of determination one should have to spend 6 long years in the jungle, in different places, to achieve something, some sort of spiritual, stage that he's just wishing to achieve. He has not experienced it, so he does not know if he is going to be successful or not. He does not know. And another thing that I think we can really, really reflect on is that he met so many teachers and he remained uninfluenced by them. He was not influenced by anyone, but it does not mean that he disregarded. He listened to everyone, he learned from them, he respected them. But ultimately, it comes back to his own understanding and experience. He keeps on asking the question, is it, the thing that I was looking for? He was not satisfied. And then he moved on to another teacher, another place, another method of practice. So this is also, I think, interesting in the modern time, especially in the context of Buddhist practice. I think that, in my understanding, in different Buddhist countries and also non-Buddhist countries, there are a lot of temples and monasteries, all sorts of activities are going on. You see, and we are fully involved with all these activities with a certain view that probably we are going to do some work for the humanity, for ourselves, and so on. I'm not very sure how this is really going to be beneficial for our spiritual advancement. If it just becomes a kind of a traditional practice, we are just stuck into that. Every day you do the same thing, right? If there is no mental development that takes place, if there is no freedom that you experience with all these practices, rather if you generate some kind of negativity over a long period of time, and you feel like you are stuck there, then how is it going to help you? So completely one has to, it is like one has to be completely, open to any kind of practice, and until one finds out the true path, true practice that is suitable for oneself. So if you are not happy, if you are restless, if you are not getting what you want, you have to just keep on trying and move on to the next place, next teacher, because that is something that is burning within you. If it does not happen, if it is not there, then nobody can help. Yeah. So whenever Tasara has any other comment for the fellow classmate?
Not really, teacher.
Okay. Okay, then I think now we can probably move on to the next presenter, Honorable Buntan. Will be presenting from there or? Okay, wait. Okay, yeah, so I'm downloading your presentation. This is your presentation, right? Beautiful mental factors. Share it. So if you look at the list of topics, I have marked some of them that we have completed discussion in the previous lectures, right? And there are some you have not completed, and among those there are two topics specifically. In the beginning of the lecture also you have been briefly talking about it. Yeah, one is this topic number 16 and 17, right? One is a discussion of the faculty of wisdom in the Theravada Abhidhamma, that is Venerable Aloka supposed to work on this, and concept of Nibbana is discussed in the Theravada Abhidhamma. It is a topic of Venerable Indaka. So you have been talking about Nibbana already, that Nibbana should be understood as Asankata Dhamma as opposed to the other three types of Dhamma that are Sankata Dhamma, right? Chitta, Chatasika and Rupa. So Nibbana should be understood in that relation, why it is called Asankata. That is one thing in terms of the categorization of Dhamma. And in fact, when you call Nibbana as a Dhamma, I think it is also important to talk about this word. I mean, in what sense it is a Dhamma, right? You can actually bring all these Dhamma, all four types of Dhamma together when you take reference from the sutta statement that says that Sabbe Dhamma Anattati. So you can relate to that as well, because yes, of course, you can bring the discussion of Dhamma theory also into your writing. But when you say Sabba Dhamma Anatta, Sankata and Asankata Dhamma both are included, right? So how does Nibbana, fall into that category of Dhamma on the basis of Anatta, right? Yeah, so that is one point. The other is as an object of Chitta, or object of meditation or Chitta, it is described in the category of Paramatta Chittas, right? So in that relation as well, you can talk about Nibbana. Because this is an Abhidhamma course, so how Nibbana is defined in the Suttanta is not it's not something that you should include in your discussion. Try to focus on the Abhidhammic presentation of Nibbana. Okay. Yeah, so only 2000 words. So that is about it with regard to Nibbana. And with regard to the faculty of wisdom, wisdom is presented as one of the 52 types of Chaitasikas, right? So in the presentation of Chaitasikas, Aloka can look at the description of wisdom. It will provide some description, right? How wisdom functions as a Chaitasika. Plus, so this is the unique functioning of Chaitasika, wisdom as a Chaitasika. And also, as a Chaitasika, how it appears in other Chittas, together with some other Chaitasikas, right? For example, when it says Ditthigata Sampayutta. Ditthigata Sampayutta, it refers to wrong view. Ditthigata Vipayutta, without this wrong view. Does it mean the presence of right view? Right? And then when you talk about ignorance, avidya, or moha, delusion, and you talk about amoha as opposed to moha, non-delusion, does it compare to knowledge or wisdom? Right? So in that relation, I think you can look at this faculty of wisdom, right? Yes. And probably to some extent, the presence of wisdom is there in the Paramatta Chittas as well. So you can probably check into that section as well. So these are the two, because we are not going to have discussions on these two topics, okay? Okay, let us start our discussion on conditional relations. In the beginning, I said a few words with regard to these conditional relations. Two approaches. One is the law of dependent arising, that is called Paticcasamuppada. The other is causal relations or conditional relations, Patthana, right? So of these two, the law of dependent arising, that is Paticcasamuppada, is marked by the simple happening of a state depending on its antecedent state. It just provides you the discussion of causal connection between two factors, right? So this is the formula. This is in Anuloma order here. Imasming sati idang hoti imasupada idang upajjati yadidang avijja paccaya sankhara sankhara paccaya vijnanam vijnana paccaya namarupam namarupa paccaya salayatanam salayatana paccaya fasso fassa paccaya vedana vedana paccaya tanha tanha paccaya upadana upadana paccaya bhavo bhava paccaya jati jati paccaya jara maranam soka parideva dukkha domanasopayasa sambhavanti eva metassa kevalassa dukkha khandassa samudayo hoti. Now, if you look at it carefully, you can understand its Patiloma order as well. Okay, so in the discussion of conditional relations by Bhavarattasara, there was a mention of causal efficacy and the ending of result because of the absence of cause, and that is not presented or discussed in terms of causal efficacy because it works backwards. It is like, as long as there are causes, there are effects based on those causes, and when there are no causes, there are no effects. That's all. So what is necessary is to remove the causes. So what is clear is that in a way it is functioning one way, right? Cause effect. This causality is functioning only to that direction. And of course, in the discussion of higher teaching of the Buddha, it should be understood in terms of complete confusion. Why? Because when you say avijja paccaya sankhara and so on, the whole process begins. Ignorance represents confusion, ends up in dukkha khandasa samudaya, origination of the entire mass of suffering, right? In other words, it is because of this total confusion there is suffering. When there is no confusion, there is no talk about suffering. Okay, so here we are not going to discuss about the paths and so on. Just to understand this matter, if you take suffering to be the result, it causes ignorance and so on. Two factors are considered as a root cause. One is avijja, the other is tanha. Okay, and you would find that these 12 factors, even though they are presented in terms of 3 lifetimes and in different ways, they are always present within a single individual, almost every moment of his life. The only difference is that which factor is predominant at a certain point. Okay, so that is why you have the term paticca samuppada or paticca samuppanna. You do not have paticca nirodha. It is not based on something that something else is seized. It's not, it is, there is nothing that is functioning as a cause for the cessation of something else. It is functioning in the way that the causes are removed so that the results are also not going to happen. So that is the Patiloma order. When there is no ignorance, there is no sankhara. That is Patiloma order. Tattha tayo adda dwadasangani visata akara tisandi chatusankepa tini vattani dve mulani cha veditabbani. So it says that this paticca samuppada, this theory or this presentation has to be understood, in terms of 3 periods, that is past, present and future. 12 factors that are mentioned in the formula, 20 modes. We will come to that very soon. 3 connections and 4 divisions, 3 rounds and 2 roots. 2 roots represent this avijja and tanha. Okay, how ignorance and conditioning activities belong to the past. So consider these 12 factors, 12-factored formula. Among these 12 factors, ignorance and conditioning activities, that is avijja and sankhara, are said to belong to the past. Birth, decay, death belong to the future. The intermediate age to the present. Thus, there are 3 periods. 12 factors as they are seen in the formula. 5 causes pertaining to the past, 5 effects to the present, 5 causes pertaining to the present, 5 effects to the future. So that is how you have 20 modes, 3 connections and 4 divisions. Because when you take up these 12 factors in terms of past, present and future, past to present, This is one connection, right? In the present, when it is a result of the past, that is called effect. The past aspect, avidya and sankhara, functioning as a cause. And then in this life, there is effect of these causes. And then there are other factors that function as a cause in this life for the effect in the future life. Right? So you have in this present life, you have the aspect of effect from the past life and the aspect of causes for the future life. Right? So you have two things together in this present life. So that is how you have cause from the past life to the present life effect, one connection. From present life effect to cause again, right? Another connection. And from cause in this life to the effect in the future life is another connection. Three connection, four divisions, right? In 3 lifetimes. 3 rounds, ignorance, craving, and grasping belong to the round of passion. One part of becoming, known as action, and moral and immoral activities belong to the round of karma. One part of becoming, known as renewed existence, pratibhava, and the rest belong to the round of effects. Ignorance and craving should be understood as the 2 roots. So we can see it clearly in the next slide. So this is how it is presented in terms of past, present, and future. These 2 factors belong to past category, right? And how many here? 5 of them. Present effect, and 3 of them present causes, right? And the last 2 belong to future. So these 12 factors are explained in terms of 3 lifetimes: past, present, and future. So you have 20 modes in 4 groups. 3 connections between past to present: 1, present to present again, effect and cause; 2, and then from present causes to future effects; 3. So 3 connections, right? So this is another chart that shows this very clearly in terms of cause and effect. 2 factors, and in these 2 factors, these 3 are included. Why? Because just as these 2 are presented in terms of cause, these 3 are also categorized as cause. See here, these 2 cause, these 3 also cause, right? Yes. What about this 5? They correspond to birth and decay in terms of effect, right? So here what you see is actually this group again. You see avidya and sankhara this side, and this 2 here. Craving and attachment. Bhava is not exactly here. It is put separately. And jati and jara marana, this side, and this 5 from here. So this is just a different presentation of the same thing in terms of cause and effect. Yes, so craving and ignorance are said to be 2 main roots. Ignorance is called the root from the past extending into the present, which reaches its culmination in feeling. Craving is called the root from the present extending into the future, which reaches its culmination in decay and death. So you have ignorance that culminates in feeling, then you have craving that culminates in decay and death. Now this is the Abhidhammic presentation of conditionality or causality in terms of 24 conditions. Hetu pachayo, arammana pachayo, adipati pachayo, anantara pachayo, samanantara pachayo, sahajata pachayo, ayamaya pachayo, nisaya pachayo, upanisaya pachayo, purejata pachayo, pachajata pachayo, asevana pachayo, kamma pachayo, vipaka pachayo, ahara pachayo, indriya pachayo, jhana pachayo, magga pachayo, sampayutta pachayo, vipayutta pachayo, ati pachayo, nati pachayo, vigata pachayo, avigata pachayo, ayametta pattananayo. So this is the method of conditional relations. These are in English. The difference between the two methods should be understood as follows. In the first method, that is in the method of Paticcasamuppada, what you can see is that because of A arises B, because of B arises C. When there is no A, there is no B. When there is no B, there is no C. In other words, this being so, that is, this not being so, that is not. Imasming sati idang hoti, imassa uppada, imasming asati idang nahoti. So this is the Paticcasamuppada, right? And what you see in the Pattananaya is this. When we say that A is related to B in the way of coexistence, interdependence, we get an illustration of Pattananaya. So Pattananaya particularly focus on the relationship between A and B, right? How does A appear? How does it function? How does it exist? It's arising, existing, and ceasing. And then it functions as a cause for the origination of the next moment. Furthermore, the principle of dependent origination is expressed by the dictum. Yeah, this is what we have been discussing. Sati idang hoti masopada idang upajjati. The opposite process of ceasing is expressed as imasming asati idang nahoti imasa nirodha idang nirujjati. This we have been discussing already. In the Abhidhamma exercise, this principle is defined as the arising of effects evenly in dependence on a conjunction of conditions. So you need to have a certain amount of conditions, based on which its effects will take place. So one thing we need to keep in mind that there is no single cause for single effect. There is no discussion of single cause and single effect. There are always multiple causes and multiple effects. It means that nothing arises from a single cause and that nothing arises as a single effect. If in the suttas only one factor is mentioned as the condition for another, for example, if it says avijja paccaya sankara, one factor is mentioned, right? Why it is that? It is in order to focus on the most important condition among many others. And likewise for effects. When one factor is mentioned as a leading condition because of its prominence, right? It does not mean that it is the only condition that is present or that is functioning. Similarly, when there is a discussion of single effect, it is because of the because of it being the leading factor. It does not mean that it is just as a single effect, it is coming into being or it is existing. Further discussion on the Pattananaya. Pattananaya, as it is clear that it has been developed in the Abhidhamma literature, its purpose is not to substitute the earlier doctrine of dependent origination, but to supplement it. And this is, I think, very clear by now. Primarily, the conditional relations of the Abhidhamma doctrine of conditionality are used to explain the relationship between each pair of factors in the 12-fold formula of dependent origination. Right? Its purpose is not to explain the absolute origin of the series of mental and material dhammas, into which our world of experience is analyzed, but to describe the uninterrupted continuity of the samsaric process. Right? So the discussion does not focus on the absolute origin of the series of Namarupa. Rather, what it says is the uninterrupted continuity that is taking place in the samsaric process. So this is something that one should note, that the discussion focuses on the uninterrupted continuity of the samsaric process. Once you are out of samsara, then probably this does not apply, you see. So there are three postulates which the Abhidhamma doctrine of conditionality recognizes as axiomatic. So when talking about the 24 conditions, these are three theories, three principles that we need to keep in mind. One is that nothing arises without the appropriate causes and conditions. This rules out the theory of fortuitous origination, adicca samuppanna, and the theory that rejects all principles of causality and conditionality. So, adicca samuppanna as opposed to paticca samuppanna. Paticca samuppanna says that there is a causal relationship with regard to anything and everything that comes into being, right? Adicca samuppanna refers to abrupt happening, accidental happening, right? So it means that there is no causal connection. Anything can happen anywhere, anytime. Yeah. The second principle is that nothing arises from a single cause. First says that there are presence of causes and conditions for anything to arise, right? The second says that when you talk about causality, you have to keep in mind that nothing arises from a single cause. There is always multiple causes. It rules out all theories of a single cause, Ekakaranavada. Their rejection means that the Abhidhamma dissociates itself from all monistic theories which seek to explain the origin of the world from a single cause, whether this single cause is conceived as a personal God or an impersonal Godhead. It serves as a critique of all metaphysical theories which attempt to reduce the world of experience to an underlying trans-empirical principle. You see how important it is to understand this principle. As soon as you talk about, a single cause functioning as the main cause for the origination of anything, for example, as you can see, in the case of theistic philosophy, theistic religion, that God is some kind of force from which everything came to exist, or an impersonal Godhead. That means you do not identify a supreme individual called God, but you are identifying a supreme power or a supreme principle, right? For example, Jagadatman, great soul, great consciousness, or even Brahman, not Brahma as a god, but Brahman as a force. What is the problem with believing in this kind of theory? The problem is that if you come from this God or this force, that means you do not have any free will, right? So all kinds of activities, whatever you do, whatever activities you are involved, it is all regulated by this power. So you are powerless, right? So there is then there does not appear any discussion of how to get out of this troublesome world and so on, or following a certain paths and so on. So it is the will of the God only. So this theory rules out all these ideas. Okay. And the third principle is that nothing arises as a single solitary phenomena. Ekasa dhammasa uppatti patisedita hoti. Effect, or earlier we have been talking about there is no single cause. Now there is no single effect. Okay, nothing arises as single entity. If we elaborate on this, this should mean that on the basis of a single cause, or on the basis of a multiplicity of causes, or purely due to fortuitous circumstances, there can never be a single effect or a solitary phenomena. It is on the rejection of these three views that the Abhidhamma doctrine of conditionality is founded. Their rejection means from a plurality of causes, a plurality of effects takes place. Applied to the Dhamma theory, this means that a multiplicity of Dhammas bring about a multiplicity of other Dhammas. So if you understand this much, even though there are some complexities with regard to the 24 Pachayas, if you go into detail in each of these conditional relations, with this theoretical understanding, it should become easier, I think. Because what it says is that if you are talking in terms of just dharmas, a multiplicity of dharmas function as a cause to give rise to a multiplicity of other dharmas. Now, a few more things we need to consider here. One is that when you talk about the relationship between these two set of dhammas, let's say two set of dhammas, right? What is the relationship between these two set of dhammas? Because you are talking here in terms of cause and effect, the question may be, when you talk about cause and effect, is there something of the effect that is present in the cause that is being transmitted, in the process, right? Or between the relationship of cause and effect, from cause when there is effect, is there something of the cause that is present in the effect? This is one aspect that Professor Karunadasa clarifies in his chapter. Okay, so apart from just looking at the conditional, relations in the Abhidhamma Sangaha, if you are interested, I suggest that you look at this chapter from Professor Karunadasa. So now here, this is the discussion between the relationship between these two set of dharmas. Furthermore, among other points, one is that if a particular set of dharmas can arise all by itself, or does it require some external force arising by itself? That is, that it's more like sayankata, self-made. Parankata means created by others, with the support of others. Now, this is in some way related to the Nagarjuna's, theory of this Chatushkoti. One clear conclusion that emerges from this situation is that dhammas always arise not as solitary phenomena, but as clusters. Should be clusters, not dusters. Clusters. This is a Typing error. This is true of both mental and material dhammas. This explains why whenever consciousness arises, together with it, there must arise at least 7 mental factors. At least those 7 universal mental factors. You remember the first group? Yeah. So this is at the minimum level. Actually, never 7. It is always more than 7. No physical instance can ever occur with less than 8 constituents, consciousness and its 7 universal concomitants. Psychic instance, sorry. We thus can see that even the smallest psychic unit or moment of consciousness turns out to be a complex correlational system. In the same way, the smallest unit of matter, called the basic octet, Suddhataka, is in the final analysis a cluster of 8 material factors, namely the 4 great material elements and 4 items of dependent matter: color, odor, taste, and nutritive essence. None of these material factors arise simply because they are necessarily coexistent and positionally inseparable. If you just attentively look at the description in this passage, a lot of things will become clearer. First of all, there is a discussion of appearance of any dharma as a cluster, not as a solitary phenomenon. This is something that you need to note. Okay, this is the first point. Second is, this is not just in the case of psychic instance, mental event, where you have a lot of chatasikas present with the chitta in one single mind moment. It is true even with regard to the smallest unit of matter. So the basic octet, the smallest unit of matter, according to Abhidhamma, Suddhataka, is said to consist of 8 material factors. So we'll discuss it when we go through the discussion of matter. And finally, in the last sentence, it says that none of these material factors arise simply because they are necessarily coexistent and positionally inseparable. Now, with regard to the mental events, you have to say that how do you really separate all these chatasikas and everything in one single mind moment? It is not possible because, first of all, what is mind? You cannot locate it. You can just experience it. It is abstract. So no specific body part is, said to be the location of mind, right? So mind is not located in any of the body parts. So therefore, it is difficult to think about the mind. So it is always the mental analysis, right? So when you develop your mind to that extent of purity, then only probably you are able to really see it, identify it, right? But now here the discussion says that it is the same with regard to the material, factors as well. Now in the physics, there's a discussion of, matter in terms of atoms, neutrons, right? Protons, quarks, or some kind of wave or particle. So a single unitary existence of a matter is not seen, it's not found, even from scientific perspective. What is it exactly? You cannot really pinpoint. It is this. With regard to the existence of matter, it is always a cluster of so many factors that are coexistent and positionally inseparable. They are coexistent. This is something we need to keep in mind. They are coexistent. They should exist together and positionally inseparable. You cannot separate them. You cannot really pinpoint this is this and this is that. It is like, how do you say? It is like cloud. From cloud, we have rain, right? Cloud is moving in the air. But if you are talking about how cloud is, made up of, how many things are present there, probably you can have the entire discussion, but you cannot really separate one from the other. It's like air getting thickened, right? So what it means is that there is no solid thing as such. That is the thing that is made clear here. Yes, of course. One other complexity is that there is problem between observer and what is observed. So the object of investigation, the object of observation is always influenced by the observer. And also it is always influenced in some way by the instruments that are used for the observation. There are two other basic principles behind the Abhidhamma doctrine of conditionality. The first is that no mental or material Dhamma can propel itself into existence by its own power. So this is what I have been saying, that there is no self-origination originating from within itself with regard to mental and material Dhamma. By their very nature, Dhammas are completely devoid of own power or own sway. This amounts to the rejection of the principle of self-causation. So there is no self-causation. Self-causation means arising out of itself. In that case, it should have its own power to create itself, to come into exist. The other is that no mental or material Dhamma can be brought into being by a power external to the Dhammas either. So this is also a very important point. All these points directing to the towards the explanation of non-self, conditionality. But this is the big problem, right? That the Buddhist masters are solving. How you cannot have self? Why it is not, how it is not really possible to have self? It is a complete misconception, right? And how is it so? This amounts to the rejection of the principle of external causation. So there is no self-causation, there is no external causation. The rejection of these two theories means that Dhammas alone help other Dhammas to arise and persist in being. So if you come back to this statement of Acharya Buddhaghosa, Suddha Dhamma Pavattanti, pure Dhammas ruling on. That is the truth. All the other things are just confusion, perception, stories, Yeah. In reality, what is going on is Suddha Dhamma Pavattanti, pure Dhammas ruling on. The nature of the relationship between causes and effects. Yeah. Now let's look at this slide that talk about the nature of the relationship between causes and effects, because we have been talking about a cluster of causes or multiplicity of causes and multiplicity of effects, right? The cause should not be understood as some kind of potential effect. Cause should not be understood as some kind of potential effect. Now, this is about the relationship. What is the relationship between the cause and effect? What is it that is being transmitted? Is there anything at all that is being transmitted? How the continuity is maintained? So when there is a discussion of continuity, uninterrupted continuity, as the phrase is used here, but sometimes it is, referred to as a discontinuous continuity. But I think it can be understood in this both ways. Uninterrupted continuity, when you take up the discussion of bhavanga chitta, right? Passive and active consciousness, the continuity is maintained. If it is not active, it is passive. If it is not passive, it is active. Between the two moments, this passive consciousness functions. That is what we have already discussed when we have been discussing about cognitive process, right? In other words, the cause is not pregnant with the effect. It is the idea in the Sankhya philosophy. So this idea rejects the philosophy of Sankhya, that they say that there is some kind of effect that is present in the cause that is being transmitted. It is like when you plant a seed, that is something from the seed that is getting matured into a full form of plant, right? The essence is there. That is the meaning. The essence is there. It is in some way, yes, the essence is there, that is being transmitted or flourished, or that is advancing. But that is not accepted in Buddhist theory of conditional relations, that nothing of effect is present in the cause, or nothing from the cause that is being transmitted in the effect. Next, the cause is not in the effect. When you try to understand the effect and its relationship with the cause, you do not find anything of the cause being present in the effect as well. This is the other way around, right? Phala hetu nati. The effect is empty of the cause. The effect is empty of the cause. There is cause and effect. Because of the causes, there are effects. But the effect is empty of cause. Cause is not present in the effect. This is explained to mean when the condition exists, there is the arising of the effect. When the condition does not exist, the effect ceases to be. Thus, the dhammas become causes by the mere fact of their existence. What this means is that nothing passes from the cause to the effect. In other words, the cause does not pervade the effect. Effect is empty of the cause. It means nothing of cause is present in the effect. It does not mean that it came to exist without the cause. This is to further clarify actually that, because if somebody simply says that, you need to understand the causality in the sense that there is cause and there is effect. So because of this cause, there is this certain effect, and That means that there is something that is coming from the cause and that has been continuing, right? So this is just to reject this idea that there is continuity, but there is no transmission of anything that is taking place, because there is really nothing to really being transmitted, because then you fall into the theory of, like, how do you say, a certain type of identity or a certain type of entity, right? Right. Mostly similar. Okay, so maybe the remaining part of this is just, actually I did not include the 24, I mean description of these 24 conditions. To some extent they are categorization, that's all. I just wanted to focus on these theories because then it would be easier to understand this 24 Pachayas. We do not have time now, but let me show this very quickly. Where is it? Yeah, so look at this picture here. This is just to show that what we have been discussing so far, to show that in one single moment of existence, there are a number of pachayas, conditioning forces that are present. For example, here, arammana, purejata, atti, avigata, right? And then anantara, samanantara, panisaya, nati, vigata, nisaya, purejata, atti, avigata, right? And their relationship. As it is said here, there are up to 8 conditioning forces which work together in this group, right? So very briefly, you have 24 pachayas, and as Tasara also mentioned a bit, and it is found in the description of Professor Karunadasa, that actually if you look at these 24 pachayas carefully, you would see that the number can be reduced to 21, right? There are some that are mentioned probably for a round figure for the for I don't know, for probably a kind of a easier or presentation and so on. So this is one thing. The other is that even if it is 21 or 24, if you look at their description, each specific condition has a specific functions and characteristics. But when you talk about arising and existing of a certain Dhamma, there are always a number of pachayas that are present in the cause, in the effect, right? So when you focus on different aspect of this momentary Dhamma, origination of this Dharma, then you give different name, right? In terms of root, when the root is present, root cause, anantara, samanantara, upanisaya, right? Purejata, and this comes in relation to when you talk about 17 mind moments. There are something that comes first and something that comes later. So some are functioning as preceding condition, some are functioning as a late condition, and so on, right? So I think this is sufficient for today. We can end our class here. Those of you who want to present next week, let me know, and then I will organize the class accordingly so that I can focus on all these different aspects to conclude in the next class. Thank you for joining the class.